I'm going to put my skates on with super investments and insurance because Andrew said I only have 2.5 hours. I take super seriously. Now, superannuation will probably be one of the biggest assets you'll have in your life and accumulate in your life. And when I talk about pensions a little bit later, you'll see why it's one of the most important investment structures you have. From a tax perspective, super advantageous. All earnings inside superannuation is taxed at 15%. Superannuation is a person sitting in a chair. They pay tax on income just like we pay tax on income. And income for a superannuation is, if it's invested in shares, the dividend component of that growth is taxed at 15%. If you, in a self-managed super fund, you buy a property, the property generates assessable income through rent. That rent is taxed at 15%. Compared to us, who are taxed on marginal tax rates, 34, 39, 47%. So very good thing to invest in superannuation from a tax perspective. How to choose a good super fund? That's the $1 million question. I don't know. I believe there's no such thing as a bad super fund. You get good super funds and you get less good super funds. I think one of the big mistakes a lot of my clients that I've seen, in the last couple of years have made with choosing super funds is they focus only on fees and on returns, and that's all they look at. When you look at fees in deciding what super fund are you going to have, if you're going to choose the fund with the lowest fees, you must just understand you get what you pay for. There are certain features and structures inside some super funds that are not available in other ones that might be important. Things like binding death benefit nominations, we talked about wills and making sure your funds pass to the right people at the right time. Some super funds don't allow you to do a binding death benefit nomination. What's the difference between binding and non-binding? So in a non-binding death benefit nomination, you say to your super fund, if I die, I want the money to go to my wife, but it's non-binding on the trustee. So the trustee still will have discretion whether they are going to pay the money to your wife or to your estate. So that's very important from a fee perspective. So insurance, in a lot of super funds I've seen, automatic insurances. As soon as you get into the super fund, start working for your employer, you get life and TPD insurance that you don't have to provide proof of good health for. 80% of the time that insurance is not worth the paper it's written on, because you're always going to struggle getting that claim paid. So again, I'm not saying pay the highest fee to a super fund, because you might pay for features and benefits that you don't need and are not important to you. When you look at returns, some super funds manipulate that. Don't let that be the one thing that makes you decide on what super fund to go for. I've seen last night, actually, a couple of weeks ago, a specific super fund started an ad on TV to say we've had an average return of 10.37 over the last 37 years. Everyone jumps up and down and say, what's the name of this super fund? I want to go there, because an average return of 10% is absolutely amazing. Last night they changed the ad to say average return is 8.8% over the last 37 years for the same super fund. So it's getting window dressed. So some of the returns are not really mark to market. So don't get stuck on fees and returns when you decide on a super funds. Most people don't know the balance. How many know what exactly the balance is in your super fund? Beautiful. That's a fantastic result. What are the funds invested in? Do you know? Is it in a balanced fund, a growth fund, high growth fund, conservative fund? Great stuff. You need to know these things. Very important. Like I said, super funds offer great tax benefits through contributions. Have you heard of unused concessional contributions? A new thing that's out. So if you miss out on your annual concessional contributions, I'll just draw a picture here. This is your super fund, your concessional contributions. So these are pre-tax contributions. Your cap's $27,500 per year. So if you only contribute $20,000 this year, next year you can catch up on the $7,500 that you lost out on, and you can keep catching up for a rolling period of 5 years. Okay, so That's a big tax benefit because in 1 year you can now make a contribution of, let's say, $50,000, which reduces your taxable income and can drop you from a 39% tax rate to a 34% tax rate.
So if I understand you correctly, if you haven't put in, for the last 3 years, you can put in 27.5 times 3, can you?
The theory is correct, but this changed. So the first year it started 3 years ago, the cap was 25. Last year it was 27.5. This year 27. So if you haven't made contributions,
it'll be whatever that rate is based.
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah.
Okay.
So if you haven't made any contributions, this is the current year, you can do 77,500 and make that contribution all in 1 year. Yeah. Through a personal deductible contribution, and that total contribution is now tax deductible for you in that 1 year. Perfect strategy that Nitin and I use for clients who sell properties and make a massive capital gain. We use the concessional contributions catch up to reduce that capital gains tax and not give the ATO they don't deserve. The other side of super is very creatively called non-concessional. And here you can put in 110,000 per person per year. So these are pre-tax contributions. Those are post-tax contributions inside super. Now, I want to move on to the other phase of superannuation. I like my colors on my pictures. This is pension. 8 out of 10 people that we see in the office don't have any idea that pension exists in superannuation. And both those structures fall under superannuation legislation in Australia. The difference is you can access your pension when you're 60. So what happens a lot, what a lot of clients do is they get to 60, they fire their boss, they've got $1 million in their superfund, and they say to the superfund, give me my money. I'm out, I'm sitting on the stoop drinking coffee. And the superfund pays that out to the client's bank account, and from there the client now makes a living. Whatever they earn now in this account on interest, and whatever they invest this $1 million now, whatever income this investment earns will be taxable income in the person's hand, just like income that we earn. I already said this superfund is paying tax at 15%. I should actually use the red for this. The pension fund pays tax at 0. Okay? So we advise our clients to, instead of taking the money out of super, just transfer that $1 million into your pension fund. You can put it in the same bank account if you want. And whatever you earn on this is now taxed on at 0%. As soon as you're over 60, aged over 60, whatever you take out of this pension fund as an income, tax-free. Forever. Okay. So why will you take the money out of your superannuation if you knew there was a structure like this inside superannuation? Very important that you build this $1 million through contributions and investment earnings in the accumulation. We refer to this as the accumulation phase of superannuation, because all the money that goes into your pension, the source of that must be super. From your bank account, you are not allowed to put money into pension. The pension fund won't accept that. Okay? The money must go to the super fund first, or the accumulation fund, before you can move into pension.
Self-managed super as well.
Self-managed super as well, yeah. So this is just superannuation legislation. Yeah. With the self-managed super fund, I mean this super fund can now own a property, like Nitin said. That's the only difference between all supers, corporate, industry, retail, whatever. The only difference is a self-managed super fund can buy a property directly, like we can. The other super funds can't do that. So you can even then, in your self-managed super fund, move this property over into the pension phase. All the rent on that property is now tax-free. If you sell it after age 60 and you make a $50 billion capital gain on it, tax at 0. Total tax-free zone after age 60 in superannuation. And that's why we always recommend to clients try and maximize your contributions to superannuation for that reason. Because you're going to end up here one day. If the bus don't eat you, Okay, in retirement. So that's why superannuation is important. Pensions, you'll never have the excuse that you don't know that the pension phase in superannuation exists. This will always be the end game, or should be the end game in your financial planning.
Would the money in the pension fund, would there be any interest rate on that, or just?
Yes, it depends on what you invested in. Yeah, so you can invest your $1 million in shares, which generate dividends or pay dividends. You can invest it in property. You can rent, you can sell those shares and make capital gains back. You can invest it in cash, you can invest it in bonds, whatever you decide. That is what you can invest it in.
What happens if you're still working after 16? Is that income tax free?
That's a great question. Yeah, I have a feeling you know the answer already.
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
All right. So the pension, 0% pension comes into play, like I said, after age 60 if you are fully retired. Fully retired, yeah, no more working, gainfully employed. Or age 65, as soon as you reach age 65, whether you're working or not. So as soon as you reach age 65, your pension becomes a zero tax zone. If you're older than 60 and still employed, this pension fund will still pay tax at 15%. And this is where, I think you asked the question earlier on TTR, the transition to retirement, we use this pension as a TTR strategy. So we'll transfer funds from superannuation, you're still working now by the way, because you're older than 60, all income from this fund is tax-free. So we pay you that tax-free income and we go back to your employer and say, you dudes are paying me too much, I don't need all of this money. Just salary sacrifice that back into my super. And because you salary sacrifice, you drop your taxable income and you don't give the 8 hours they don't deserve. So you give the money to yourself, yeah? Instead of to the 8 hours. Does that make sense? Yeah. It's a little bit technical, but that's why we use. So there's two kind of pensions when you're older than 60.
So tax efficiency is still the threshold of 27,500 as in for the current year.
Yeah.
And whatever that calculates, like every financial year it is.
Yep. And like I said, you can catch up on the previous years. It started, this gap started in the 18-19 financial year.
But I think with that one, you need to have a maximum of 100,000, right?
With the contributions and catching up, you're right. Yeah. So if your balance in your super is more than 500,000 on this side, you cannot use that.
Correct.
There are some limitations. The only limitation is on downsizer contributions. So if you have to be age 60, you sell your home and move to a smaller place. You and your wife can put money into super regardless of what the balance is. I think you can contribute $300,000 each, regardless of the balance. Okay. Any questions on superannuation? Pensions?
Is it a better tax efficient strategy not to accrue income in super but to build wealth? Like, for example, imagine investing in shares of Google or Tesla or something, and holding that investment for a longer duration instead of selling it off and generating capital gains within super, which then becomes taxable at 15% rate.
It's the tax rate that makes it a better investment to put the money into super first.
That's one, and second is like from super you then target towards that wealth, which is going to give you like capital gains, like after 10 years or 15, so longer gestation period assets.
Yes. You will always still just pay the 15% tax in superannuation.
If I invested in a property, for example, hold the property for 15 years, and let's say there is no accrual from it, like positive cash flow in terms of taxation. In that case, there will not be any tax on that.
On the side of the property.
Till I sell the property.
Yes.
So if I were to match that, like after 10 or 15 years or 20 years that I sell the property, then it's not subjected to 15% because. That's
correct.
Yeah.
Yes. So it also depends on what your tax rate is and whether you generate income from the asset.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
When I do the calculator a little bit later, I'm going to use a property we're not paying $1. So 50 cents, just to show you the difference. But that's all I have to say about super.
Could you say something about the spouse contribution?
Say again?
Spouse contribution.
Spouse contributions you can make. There are also limitations in terms of how much your spouse can earn. So these are seen as non-concessional contributions. So spouse contribution. If you qualify for it, you as a spouse can make a $3,000 contribution, and for every dollar that you put in, you get an 18% tax rebate. Yeah. So the maximum you can get back is $540, I think. Then you have the government co-contributions, which is pretty cool. All heard of that? Yeah. So based on your income again, if you qualify for the full government co-contribution, you can put in $1,000 a year into your super fund as non-concessional contributions, and the moment you do that and lodge your tax return, the government will give you $500. So if you qualify for government co-contribution and you put the money into your super without looking at what the returns and things were, immediate 50% return on your investment. And like I said, apart from that, you can do the $110,000 a year after tax contributions in superannuation. I want to say the non-concessional side of super, this right-hand side, we refer to as the tax-free component of super, and on that side, the taxable component of super, which just means all the money that you put in as concessional contributions is going to be taxed one day. You will never pay the tax on your own super fund, and your spouse will never pay the tax on your super fund because spouse inheritance and super is tax-free. If your kids are older than 18, when you and your spouse fall off your perch, then the kids will pay that little bit of tax inside the super fund. All good? Any questions? No?
Question. So, anything like you say up to 110,000 contribution, over 27,500, it is post-tax. So you get taxed and then you're contributing.
Correct. So it's post-tax contribution. So you pay tax to marginal tax rate first, and then from your bank account you throw money into your super.
Yeah. So is there still a tax efficiency in terms of that? Say $50,000, which I contributed to a super. If that's going to earn 10% return on it, that return is going to be taxed at 15% instead of me straight away investing that money into shares, like investing into shares via super.
Yes, so if you make the after-tax contribution, it means that, let's say your marginal tax rate is 39% or 47%. You'll pay that tax first, and then make the contribution to your super fund.
Yeah.
But now it's a non-concessional contribution. Yeah, so it forms part of the tax-free component.
Okay.
Which means that on that component of super, you'll never be paying tax again.
And not even the income which is generated from that investment.
No. Great question. So if you make these contributions, you're going to kind of get a percentage of how much is taxable and how much is tax-free. So if you make most of your contributions through your life, so let's say 90% of your super is composed of taxable or concessional contributions, and 10% of this, that side, 90% of your dividends or rent or whatever, you will pay tax at 15%. This component is tax-free. All right, let's move on to the other very interesting one.
One more question before you move on. How much rough funds we require in the super fund to get a 60,000 bonus per annum? For
Income.
Income. It's coming to retirement. Roughly how much? 1.6, 1.2, 1.3?
No, we usually work on around 6% of the capital. So if you have $600,000 in your super fund, 6% you'll get 36,000. So you're looking at about 1.2 million to get about 60,000. Yeah.
Quick question: if you set up a self-managed super fund and you borrowed money to do one of the strategies, either NDIS or HMO,
Yeah.
the positive dividends of that, do they have to stay in a self-managed super fund, or
Yes.
can you? They do.
Yes. Money can only flow out of your super fund if you meet a condition of release. Death, disability, temporary residence, me traveling off back to South Africa, or reach reservation age. if you don't meet a condition of release, money cannot fly out of your suit. It's illegal. The ATO is actually clamping down on that and has been for a couple of years. People using the funds because I've got a cash flow issue now, I'll put it back next month, and then they forget. So they're not allowed to do that. Major breach.